My why is because I believe every single person deserves to be heard. That every single person has greatness within them.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Master Your Life. I'm Kate McKay, your host, and today I'm very excited to introduce the one, the only, the Allison Hare. Welcome, Allison.
It is so good to be here. I almost feel like I need walk-on music when you're saying the one, the only.
I think I'm going to add drums to that, actually, like as a cut-in when I'm editing. So yeah, and don't be surprised when you hear it. You'll be like, wait a second. So just a little bit about Allison before we get on into it, because we have a million things that we need to talk about. But Allison's a creator and host of the award-winning, globally ranked podcast Late Learner. She's a former corporate sales exec and purposely left the corporate world. She blew that bridge to coach high-performing women to redesign their lives without burnout. So just creating some cool new life. And she's also a lifestyle and career coach and keynote speaker. And Allison, I found you through Brand Builders. You were actually my brand strategist, sales consultant for an amazing company. And the reason why I decided to go forward with Brand Builders was twofold. One, because I just loved you. And number two, that I knew your strength finder and I knew that you had belief. And I realized that there is no way in God's creation that Ms. Allison H is going to work for a company that she does not believe in. So I'm very grateful to be able to switch the roles here and interview you and highlight your process, your greatness. So just thanks a lot.
I am grateful to be here. Let's chat. Let's get into it, Kate. I'm excited to be here.
So talk to me a little bit about that whole concept that I introduced you with the concept of belief. Why do you think that's such a key element in the self-discovery of who we are? And then as an end result, being able to define our purpose and then ultimately find our people.
I get the sense that when you're growing up, and us especially being in the age brackets that we are, you are taught to look pretty, be skinny, be thin, be really smart, but don't let anybody know it. Don't be too loud. That's you, Kate. Just demure, right? But you can be
that memo,
anything
Allison.
You want.
Yeah,
you can be anything you want.
I didn't get that memo.
You forgot it.
I never got the memo.
But you're also taught some really conflicting messages. Like you can be anything you want and you should, right? Like you have opportunities as women. However, like kind of growing up in the 90s, I was watching, what is the Happy Gilmore, those old 90s movies, so fun. But when you realize that the female leads in a lot of those movies, those like rom-coms or those comedies, are literally only there to be an object of desire. They're pleasant, they're pretty, they're white, usually. They don't really have any depth of character. And that was like our role models. We wanted to be taken care of. We wanted to be attractive and be the object of attraction. So I think there was a lot of conflicting messages.
Allison, is that true?
Well, I mean,
like
even
in the 90s, that you got that message? I mean, when you think about Baywatch, when was Baywatch really popular? Maybe that was the 80s.
But it's I think that might have been the 90s too.
Because if you watch that, you're like, oh my God, was this literally how women were? And to me, it seems like, I don't know where, I think I was having babies in my 90s already, right? But for you, you were in the midst of that kind of like bubblehead role. I don't even know how we got there. What an impact, though.
But it almost felt like, for me, when I was growing up, I was raised by a single mom of 6 kids. And my father is an international man of mystery. He's an international businessman. So he was gone a lot, right? So he traveled a lot. And so my mom was kind of raising us by ourselves. And she would tell me and my sisters, Allison, never rely on a man to make money. Always make your own. She did not make those choices. And she struggled every day in her life. When my parents got divorced, we lost the house. My father moved out of the country and it was really tumultuous. And so watching my mother kind of struggle and choose family, she chose to be with us. She chose to put her career self. She was an opera singer. She chose to not pursue her dreams so that she could raise us by herself, essentially, and then literally by herself with no education, no formal education that was respected in society, right? So she had to work her butt off, and just, she died penniless. She died, with chronic illness, and grew up, just grew like really, really heavy. And I watched that and go, there is no way. I'm going the exact opposite way. I'm going to work my ass off. And I did. And so everything was around, how do I make more money? And also, how do I get approval from men? How do I prove that I can play in the big leagues with the men, regardless of my gender, that I was just going full steam ahead? I feel like, generally speaking, we all are kind of sold a bill of goods. Like, I felt like I was so moldable. If you thought I was annoying, I would fix it. If you thought I was too loud, I would calm it down. If you thought I wasn't quiet enough, I would try and be more funny or more pleasant or more appeasing. But I was going to go full force. I think something happens when you turn 40. This has been my experience in my own life with my clients, my friend group. Something happens when you get in your 40s and you're like, wait a minute, that was bullshit, wasn't it? All this stuff that we learned and worked so hard in just that hustle culture. And it even, makes me a little bit, Tim Walz, right, is out campaigning. And he says to everybody, there's plenty of time to sleep when you're dead, meaning let's go campaign, let's go, let's go, let's go. And I'm like, I don't like that messaging. I think it has not aged well, even though I understand and respect the need for hard work. And what I think happens that when you turn 40 and you start to like unravel and unwind and even unlearn some of the things that you've spent your entire life having beat into you, that you need to work hard if you want to get success. And I had all of the pinnacles of success, but I wasn't happy. So, and I would feel guilty. Like, why am I not happy? I have everything I need. Why can't this be enough? And so that's where you start to peel off the layers, right? I don't know if that's been your experience, but
I am just
that's how I feel.
Anomaly of just bizarreness. I wouldn't even know what my experience. Part of the writing the memoir that I did last year, and I just had wrote for the entire month of November and wrote 52,000 words. Have no idea what I wrote. It's just somewhere in a file. When I process that, maybe I'll give you an answer. But I just think that part of it is just when you're brought up with trauma or abandonment, you evolve and you create a protective cover. And so your belief for you was, how do you get people to believe in you? And the mirror was, whatever they think is worthy of being believable about me is what I will reflect back. So when we pull the layers back from that, and all of a sudden it's like, no, who am I? What do I believe in? What am I certain of? And I guess that would be a question I would love to know. I'd love to ask you, Allison, in this moment, and you described this week as the process of what does it mean to trust myself, trust others, right? That's been your challenge. And I don't know, I too had a really challenging week about what am I doing? Like, this is weirdly, ridiculously doesn't feel like there's answer to it. But what are you most certain about? Like, we're talking at the end of a tough kind of self journey for you. What are you certain about, Allison?
I think that everything comes down to the relationships that we have, and that success needs to be redefined by relationships, not by money or other markers of success. People don't get to their deathbed and talk about all the achievements and all the awards that they won. They talk about, who do I have around me? Who enriched my life? I'm about to be 50 in October. And so I'm planning this party. It's going to be an Eras party. And I'm inviting everybody, right? And the theme is really the relationships, because I thought about, like, wouldn't it be nice to go on some amazing exotic vacation? And I was like, no, I really want to celebrate the people that helped me or were pivotal to me. And celebrate it in a way that is meaningful. So for me, it's become way more intentional with the relationships that I've had. And I've had an interesting journey, even with that in the past few years around the relationships. Like, I'm somebody that is really gregarious. I'm very extroverted. I generally think that I'm pleasant to be around and fun to be around, not annoying, maybe to some. But I woke up one day, it was a couple of years ago, and I realized I don't have any close friends. I have lots of people that I know, and I have lots of people that I'm pretty sure if I was in a bind, maybe they would be there. And I'm thinking in a bind, if I get a diagnosis, like they would come to my rescue. But nobody that I would feel good, like, hey, do you mind taking my kids for a couple of hours? Do you, would you be okay going to this appointment with me? It was weird. It was like, wait a minute, how did that happen? Where I had lots of people where I realized this is really powerful. And you can tell me if I should keep going down this path. I guess I should. There were 3 people in my life that I was really, 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 really close to. And I'm not close to them now. And when I started to reflect on all of the people that I called my best friend in my life, I talked to none of them today. None. And it wasn't like anything happened. And it wasn't like some insane blowout. It just evolved. And I think I had such a hard time kind of categorizing, like, why did this relationship change where it no longer is the same? I want more, but it's not being reciprocated in the same way. And it's not being talked about in a healthy way. And so I just kind of retreated and said, well, I guess they're busy. I guess they have different experiences of what they want. And this was, I mean, I'm in my 40s, like I really kind of beat myself up over why is this an issue now? But it became all consuming for me, where I started to kind of unpack what happened and created a framework where I completely rebuilt the inner circle. And I teach people how to do that now. And what I found is that I was not alone. The Surgeon General just recently came out and said there's a loneliness epidemic. And now it's even worse for parents that are really struggling with a lack of close relationships or trusted relationships. And they're going so fast. The expectations are so high that stress is unmanageable. So what do we do? And so that's kind of where I have come in and said, there is a way to solve this, but it requires a little bit of effort and a little bit of reflection. But the moment you get intentional about the relationships that you have, everything changes, and almost like kind of put a different lens on it, where you're almost like recategorizing those people into maybe different boxes. It doesn't mean that they're bad or wrong or anything that happened. Maybe it did. Maybe they are toxic, but they may just need to be reshuffled. And understanding of where they are and the purpose that they serve is liberating.
So when I asked you what you were most certain of, which is just so interesting, is that you were most certain that relationships, our success needs to be defined by relationships. So you know that as a certainty that that is true. So who are you, as if you were to say, this is who I am as a core value, this is what I believe in, this is who I am? Because I think that is the journey for people as they call in their tribe, that if they don't know who they are, and this goes back to that conversation about, like, here you are, I'm putting out the belief of who I am to all the relationships around me. I can be that. How do I help? How do I help you believe in me based on your criteria? And I think this is universal. And I think this is the core of loneliness, to be honest, because I think we're so busy on the outward crust of exterior. And there's this one line that I love so much, not only Martin Luther King, because he's my jam. And I know you live near his house, and I never saw it. Next time I come, I love that. It's just my soul. And yet Martin Luther King as one spiritual person speaking out the truth of why we are here. So he's the ultimate bridge builder, like you and I talked about. But Muhammad Ali says this one line, and he's getting interviewed, and he's like spitting, and he's almost like, so it's coming from his soul. And he says, I'm going to tell you how great I am. I'm going to tell you. You're not going to define my greatness. I'm going to tell you. And that line, I have goosebumps on my legs just saying it, because I think we have to truthfully have that level of conviction of knowing who we are to really succeed. And I think that very few people are courageous enough to go into the dungeon, into the darkness of their story of who they are and how those stories modeled who they are living and breathing now and who they are interested in becoming so they can attract the right person. Maybe we can do it at the same time. I haven't found that to be true.
I'm actually having a challenge with this question because I feel like we are such complex beings that to define it, it feels indefinable, undefinable. However, this is an ongoing journey. And so a lot of this is unlearning. And so for me, the simple hack that I use, do I have a yes feeling in my body? Do I have a no feeling in my body? And so it is more around, it is more feeling based, which is totally not how, you know, like you're thinking about facts and feeling facts and analyzing things. For me, it is, again, like back to the trust of the intuition of what feels right. And so I, similar to you, have a lot of irons in the fire all the time. And I don't really fit easily in any box. I can tell you traits about me and values and things like that, but who am I? I'm pretty sure I'm a good human. And I'm pretty sure I genuinely care about people. I'm pretty sure I'm flawed. I'm pretty sure all of us have that. I'm pretty sure that I have a lot to offer the world and feel like I provide more light than I provide dark. And knowing that sometimes life is going to be dark and I'm going to be dark, and that's okay. And so part of it is allowing. And so I wonder if it is just the permission to trust that the feeling that you have, and again, that yes or no feeling in your body, like just asking yourself questions, should I go left or right? Should I take that job offer or not? If there is resistance, where does that resistance come from? Is it fear, or is that resistance because it's the wrong thing? Should I date that guy? Should I, you know, he looks good on paper and I think I have a good time, but something keeps, I don't really feel drawn to him, you know, like there's so many opportunities to have that yes or no, but I think the intuition and the trust part gets built every time you are in alignment.
That's so good. What's your take on the word discernment, my darling? Because I would give that word for you, that you have a high level of discernment. It's just, I don't know why it came up. I put a little box around it on my piece of paper. What's your take on your level of discerning throughout your day?
This is so funny. Okay, this is going to be super personal. So I have been doing a little more meditation. I have rejected it a lot of times, only because I don't really want to be alone with myself for too long, right? Like my thoughts just go bananas, but I've been a little more disciplined with it. And in that meditation time, I will pray. And that prayer may look like, God, show me a sign. Am I on the right path? Whatever it is. I feel like I'm praying wrong. I'm not really the best. Like I'm not really a textbook Christian, somebody who was born in the Christian faith. Let's call it that way. And the other day I said, you know what? I'm not going to ask anymore. I'm sure that he already knows. I'm not asking it wrong. I'm just going to be here. And the only thing I'm going to request is, can you please open a window or door and give me the discernment to know which one I need to walk through? And I have been training for a half marathon. And I've been training for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. I'm generally not a runner, but I'm changing my relationship to running. And I've found that even just that phrase, I'm changing my relationship to, opens up way more possibilities for you if there's something you want to lean into or something that can unlock doors. So I've been training for this half marathon, and it is in 2.5 weeks from now. I've been training. I paid a ton of money for it because it's like a whole weekend retreat thing. And it's in this place organized by these people I really respect. You understand the power of community and kind of putting yourself, surrounding yourself with the people that feel expansive. You know, do you feel expansive or do you feel restricted? And so I'm super excited about it. And I get a message from Rory Vaden, the co-founder of Brand Builders, and said, hey, there's this big conference that I'm speaking at. I would love for you to go on behalf of Brand Builders. And it happens to be the weekend of the marathon, which I paid a ton of money for. Money that could have been allocated better places. And I started typing them back. Wow, Rory, what an incredible opportunity. Thank you so much. But I already have, and I didn't send it. And I backspace, backspace, backspace. And I'm like, wait a minute. This is the door. This is the door. Like, this opportunity to go to this conference is literally an opportunity that if I play it right, that could change my life and my family's life. And I chose that door and closed the one on the marathon.
Wow.
I am going to run the marathon anyway on Sunday, because why wouldn't I? I didn't come this far to only come this far. But I think when it comes to discernment, sometimes windows and doors are open, and just kind of having the awareness to ask the question, is this a door or is this a window? And like leaning into, not always just the analytics of it and kind of weighing the pros and cons, but leaning into the feeling again.
Powerful. What does trust mean to you, Allison?
Trust in what way?
Trust in general. How do you define trust? How do you know it? What's your relationship to it?
I'm getting a better relationship, I think, with self-trust. I feel like my relationship with my husband, we have an insane amount of trust. And that was always that way. Sometimes I have people that reach out to me and they say, I really want to, I'd love to be a guest on your podcast. And I can talk about betrayal in marriages. And I'm like, what an interesting thing. I bet it would be helpful, but it's not for my show. So it's not something I experience or have a ton of experience with betrayal. Although, of course, there were plenty of opportunities for betrayal, but I don't feel like I have a ton of trauma when it comes to trust. But the self-trust piece, the trust that I'm going to be okay no matter what, even when things outside of the marriage, like I'm building a business. And you know this, that when, I left a corporate career and I walked out 2 years ago on purpose with no plan. I don't recommend that idea, but I was really struggling with profound burnout and trusting that some months are really amazing and most days are amazing. And then there's some where it's like you're kind of slapped in the face with some practical stuff where you're just kind of trying to make the swings give a little more equanimity to those swings. And so I am practicing equanimity. Do you know what equanimity is?
Of course. Yeah. My son was a Buddhist. So
Equanimity
it's so
is like the
interesting,
ability
isn't
to
it?
stay calm no matter what.
Mm.
I'm not great at it. And honestly, today I've been all over the place, and this tends to happen at the end of the month, and perimenopause doesn't always help. So I'm actively practicing the trust part, that I am going to be okay no matter what, and that I don't need to catastrophize things in my mind. And I think that is where our mind can go sometimes. I think in terms of trusting other people, I think the challenge is when we give so much of our power away, assuming that we don't already know the answer. I need to
Did you
hire
do
this
that?
expert because I don't know. I need
So
to
is that what you're
hire this
saying?
coach.
That you've had a
What?
life of giving that power away? Because you say that very knowingly, that you gave your
I
power
feel
away.
like, yeah, I feel like there are a lot of opportunities where I have looked for external validation, which looks like giving them power away. Or if I buy this course, then that's going to be the answer to it. When in most cases, I already have the answer, but having a place to accountability and an execution plan and all of that, I'm all for it. I'll pay anybody to get me on the right track. But sometimes it is kind of identifying or trusting that I already have the answers and kind of digging in deep for it.
Takes courage. Takes great courage to do that. And I think that this really is the gateway to the loneliness issue. So any work that you do, and you're doing so much to help break this, I think this is the fact that you brought up that study and that I had just seen it in the Wall Street, the epidemic of loneliness. And the suicide rate is for men 40 through 60 is 1 to 4 for men over women, that men commit them suicide. But they also say there's a new increase in women's suicide as well. So this isn't a small thing. And it's going to become more of a crucial element as the economy humbles a little bit. So I have a question. I'm curious about your mom. What was her name?
Okay. Judith.
What was it? Judith. That's awesome. So what are 3 qualities that you loved about her?
I think you asked me this when we were together. She was funny. She was insightful and really personified unconditional love for her children. Not for anybody else. She was judgmental as all hell. She had a lot of
Did she have
opinions.
belief in you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah. So that's so cool. So she had so much belief in you. Isn't that wonderful? And the reason why I ask you that again is I know we talked about that, but it's the ability that we had someone who believed in us so deeply. And I remember the experience that you described your mom and how I could feel her presence around you and her hugging you, and just she had a pretty powerful energy. And what would it be like for you if you wore those qualities more in your life? The qualities that you loved about her, because, as I think I probably mentioned to you, the qualities of the people that we love that have passed, we can pick those up if we choose to, and 10x them and bring those qualities of Judith into the world, or for me, Will, or for whoever is listening, that person that they loved. How would your life be different if you lived more with insight, unconditional love, and being more funny?
I feel like the work that I am here to do is to break the generational patterns that kept her chained. And I feel like every time I do something bold or courageous, or I don't know if outlandish is the word, but like out of the box, my mom is probably cheering and saying, "Go, Allison, go," from heaven. And I think that doing the things that she couldn't, or felt like she couldn't express herself in that way, every time I do, it feels like she is 100% saying go.
So awesome. And I heard this, I think it was Alex Hermosi saying this, that sometimes it's not all about doing the self work and feeling like we deserve it and we're worthy in the moment. Maybe we don't feel that, but it doesn't mean that we're not doing the work for the future self that believes we are so. So it's that faith in our future self, and it's the faith of the people that loved us. That great story about Patton, I love to share. I probably said it before on my podcast, but Patton, the great Patton, the general, was a coward. And he was very afraid because he was from this incredible legacy of heroes, war heroes. And he was at a fighting line and he wanted to take a step back. and his future, his generational that was behind him, it was in front of him, said, lean forward, go forward. And he just was like, charge, right? So the reason why he often fought in battles, because he had to go to that front end line to look through the mist, to hear the calling, to meet the fear of his future self, of his past generations, which he saw through the mist. I think that's a powerful lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
It's a whole concept of, do we have to be whole and feel completely worried to take radical action to serve?
But I wonder, but I push back on that, because I feel like we are already whole. I think the world tells us that we're broken. And, I heard Catherine Morgan Scheffler. She is the author of this book called The Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control. It's a brilliant book.
Perfect.
And she said on a podcast interview, she was on my podcast, she said, assume nothing is wrong with you. Because we're always looking for, if I was only more intelligent, if I was better at strategy, if I was better at messaging, if I was better at copywriting, if I was better at whatever, if I was more disciplined, if I was less rigid, if I was whatever. And the inherent belief is that we need to be fixed. And I personally have a little beef with the personal development world, because I feel like the over identification of pathologizing everything, like, oh, I've got imposter syndrome, or I struggle with whatever. I do think it's helpful, but I think continuously pounding it of like, here's another problem we're going to solve. And you're like, huh, I didn't even know I had that problem, but I do. I think
I agree with this. And I'm the same way. And the reason why I bring up that story is not to say that it's that I think that the self movement, the self evolution, personal development movement has got it way wrong, in the sense that it's not important to pathologize our brokenness or to live within the wounds or heal everything before we serve, that we can serve from the broken cup, and the broken cup is beautiful. Our mess is beautiful, because that whatever that expression is the vase gets put back together with gold when it breaks, and it becomes more valuable. I believe that I am that broken vase, especially after Will died, that it's like I had to embrace the fact that I had to be a holy mess in the midst of people's judgment and people looking at me like, oh, you're the woman that her kid killed himself. Like, the judgment in our society of a mom is intense, dude. And I had to shut the
I didn't
noise.
even think about that.
It's intense. Mother guilt. Try that one on. Your kid, you didn't even stop your kid. My sister actually said that to one of my other sisters. You're the one of the last people that talked to Will, and you didn't stop him. Like, it's like, wow. Right? So imagine if she's saying that to my sister. Imagine what she's thinking about me. This is true story, right? So that is why I have such a conviction to lean forward into my mess and my brokenness, and why I believe it's so important that we tell stories, because we have to model what it means to step forward even in the fear, because we're completely imperfect. We're completely messes. Our lives, for many, it is a mess, a tangled mess. The fact that your dad bailed on 6 kids, that's a mess, Allison. That's a mess. That messes with you. And yet you persevere and come into life with the conviction that you're not going to give up. And I just want to say, I honor you in that conviction. And for me, it feels like a deep conviction coming from you. And it feels different from the time that I've known you, which has only been a few months.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Doing some work, dude. So what is it that you want people to know, Allison? What do you want people to know?
I think 2 things. One is that you are complete and whole. And if I am right about that, if that is true, what would you do? What would you do with that? What would you have courage to do? And I think it is investing in your relationships, not only with other people, but in your own. And what does it look like to really kind of weed out maybe some of the duds that have served their purpose in your life, like burn the friendship bracelets a little bit. And kind of, I don't know. I mean, there are so many ways to build and rebuild your inner circle that can be intentional. And what will happen is typically, if you do a couple of things a little bit differently, a little more intentionally, and I'll give you one if it could be helpful.
Please.
One thing that I did, everybody knows super connectors. Super connectors, like people who know everybody, right? Like they want to put people together. You're a super connector. I'm a super connector. I would love, if you feel like you're in that place, I would love for you to go ask a super connector. And the great thing about super connectors is they don't have to be close. You might have met them once at a party. And you could say, hey, Kate, I loved the way you made me feel when we were together. You seem to know everybody. I'm looking to meet more women that are high performers, that are entrepreneurial, people that are really forward thinking. If you know of any events that are coming up or anybody happens to pop in your mind, can you just keep me in mind for that? So I did this a couple times and it changed my life. It changed everything because they were like, you know what? I am hosting an entrepreneur's dinner for women in a couple of weeks. Would you like to go? Yes. And so I've even gotten business from them. I've gotten keynote speeches from that and just have created some really deep personal relationships because you just vibe. And so part of it is ask a super connector. And some of it is the other piece I would say is that when you meet people in passing and you're like, God, that person is fun. I really like their vibe. The hardest thing for us to do is to keep in touch. Like we should hang out. Like I would make sure that you become the person that always follows through. We should hang out. Your phone is in your hand. Let's put it together right now. And I think that makes a huge difference. Those two things will change everything. But it does require being intentional and it does require you kind of understanding what is it that you don't want? What is it that you do want? The yes feeling in your body, the no feeling in your body, and maybe recategorizing some people. And that doesn't mean that they're bad or wrong. I'm sure you may have been on the receiving end of that. I have done like keynote speeches for like women lawyers groups and all kinds of stuff on rebuilding your inner circle. And I can't tell you how many people who are partners of law firms that would come over and say, I really am struggling with this. My best friend, I don't know what happened, but we're just not the same and I don't know what to do. And it is an epidemic and people just don't know how to handle it. And so hopefully this can give you a little bit of a starting point and know that you are not alone. There's nothing wrong with you. Sometimes it just is, you may have outgrown your container. And once you outgrow your container and your boundaries and kind of your edges of what you want changes, and sometimes some of the people do too.
And it's okay.
It is okay. It does require pain and it does require grief. But on the other side, when you have the right people all around you, then there is nothing that you can't do. And when you feel trust, when you feel like you know who to call when you are struggling, or you know who to call where you're not waking up going, nobody is even inviting me to stuff, or I don't even know who I can call to help me watch my cat or something. When you get to that point, it doesn't have to be that way.
That's so helpful. And this is really the foundation. And I love it that our interview happened just after that study came out and how it's so pivotal to both of our platforms, coming at this from a different angle, but similar end result, which is to help people build stronger relationships with the stronger sense of self and knowing that we all have a mission to share. And then we all have,
we sure do.
Yeah. And to be able to learn that. And I love how you actually gave those 4 steps about your number 1, you're complete and whole. Number 2, what would you do? Really listen in. Number 3 is invest in your relationships, and that includes your own. And burning the dude bracelets, the friendship bracelets, yeah, the ones that aren't fulfilling, for mutually unfulfilling, right? I mean, that's the thing, is sometimes we have to set people free for the benefit of them too, that it really does have a different feel when it's like, wow, this relationship's a disservice to them, because when I'm with them, I feel really judgmental. That's the case. You're doing them a disservice being their friend.
Yes.
And it's hard when you're in personal development and you spend all day knowing, figure yourself out, that we're only 10% of the population. Allison, that's the real deal, right? And I'm being generous with the 10%. The rest of the people are unconscious, happily so, some of them, right? So it's a call to action for sure. The power of connection. Allison, thank you so much for this time. I'm deeply
honored. Thank you, Kate.
And you taught me a lot. And in fact, when I was going to a conference in Nashville, I flew into Atlanta to meet you. I saw a client too after you, but I was like, I am going to fly into Allison and get eye to eye with Allison. And I'm so grateful that I did.
Yeah. You are 1 in a million, Kate.
You too, boo. Well, thank you so much. And thanks to all the viewers and listeners of Master Your Life. Remember, it's in the power of your connections. Recommit to be the super connector in your life. See you next time.